probably call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Coles.
Here.
Epley.
Here.
Prince. Weaver.
Here.
Vogel.
Here.
Nice. I'll get it right one time.
Alrighty.
That's usually how I cheat, as I look at them.
What was your name? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm Grant.
Grant.
I'm the new,
The new Joey.
Joey. I'm Joey too.
No. Nice to meet you. Public comment not related to the items on the agenda.
Is Trevor, got any, Trevor?
No, I'm good.
Public hearing? There's none. Okay. Moving on. Bylaws. Any of them covered, however, I'm sure. No, I only had a couple. I don't know how you wanna go over it.
I would just say fire away at questions as we go through it. And whoever can help us navigate those questions and answer them.
What are the highlighted things?
The highlights.
Typically where you would be interested in making adjustments based on what you as a board want to do.
Do you need a copy?
I was gonna pull it up.
Oh, okay.
But if you have one printed, I'll.
You can pass this one on. And I have one. I
have extras. Yeah.
Say Tim usually brings his own.
What do you like to do?
Okay, well, I mean, I feel like the first one is highlighted, that's what I kinda thought it was for us to like really decide if that's what we wanted, and to me, I don't know why we would reinvent the wheel as far as changing anything.
That's basically what the powers of the Brownfield Authority are, is really like that last sentence.
Else have any questions about the highlighted areas? I guess, on the first page, Article 3, Section 3, it talks about kind of in the middle of the paragraph, how, anyone who's a director can be kind of reappointed, but it doesn't really say how many times, or is that like indefinitely, or, obviously I'm super, super young, so, I mean, could I just be on this board for another 60 years, or how, limit as long as you are.
Most of the Brownfield authorities I work with or serve on don't have a limit to the number of terms you can have, but you do need to be reappointed every certain number of years.
And that's where it's, okay.
Yeah. And usually they rotate secretary, chair, vice chair.
Did you hear that? They rotate. Younger than I am.
They don't always.
Tim's next.
Oh,
Tim's not next.
I sat on a board where I did 3 consecutive terms as chair because nobody else wanted to do it.
Well, why would they look at your, okay, so that kind of clears that up for me. Does anybody else have any other questions on the first page? Let's just keep blowing on by. How about the second page? The highlighted areas are obviously something that somebody wanted us to pay.
So meetings are, how often do you want to have meetings? Some boards set a meeting every month. I work for a community that holds 2 a year. And then if something comes along, they call a special meeting. And then I have some boards that say, we will hold our meeting on the 3rd Thursday of every month if there's business to hold. So if nobody comes to the board with a project and there's nothing that needs to be voted on in terms of, say, a reimbursement or an existing plan, then they just cancel.
Again, our initial phases, we decided we were gonna meet this is the 3rd Tuesday of the month, but I don't think it's necessary to meet if we have nothing to talk about. It's nice to see people on. So how do we?
I would leave it as is, because then the chair and the directors can decide when the meetings are. Because you're not gonna do them every month, I don't think, unless you have something going on. You might be able to do it more often.
Yeah. That, just leaving it as it is. We're a small enough group that I think we can probably communicate effectively through email, right, Dan?
So the nice thing about saying we're gonna meet the third Tuesday of every month is that people tend to block that off on their
Yeah.
calendar. So that as opposed to trying to call a special meeting and trying to figure out when everybody might be available when you want to.
Yeah.
At least that way you can then just cancel it and.
I like that. Anybody not like that? Moving on.
So do you, I'm just taking notes, you want me to add meeting shall be the third
Yeah.
Tuesday of every month to be determined
Yeah.
based on business?
How does that work though? Because we have to let the public know, right? How do you let the public know if you're canceling it? What's the window?
You just don't put an agenda out.
Okay.
That's how we do it for our other meetings.
ZBA's like that,
Yeah.
right? They meet the fourth Thursday, but they only meet 3 times a year or something. But it's a day, it's a set day when they have an application.
Okay.
We'll figure out that wording.
Yeah. Felt like the last time we had talked about the quorum thing a little bit. Trevor, anything you think we should pay attention to in like 8, 9, and 10?
No, committees is you don't have to have subcommittees. So like if a plan comes, if somebody submits a plan, you can review it as the entire board. But sometimes it's nice to have a subcommittee that's gonna look at it, dig into it a little deeper than say everybody would be able to, have some back and forth with the developer to work out some of the things that you know as a board you probably wouldn't fly. So that when the final product comes to the board, there's a couple people that have been on a subcommittee that can say, hey, we've gone through this, these are the changes we made, we think the plan's good. And it makes it a little smoother. It's a lot for a whole board to go through. They'll still get it, but you generally have a subcommittee that will work with a developer a little closer. And those, people usually volunteer to be on them. A plan comes in, they go, oh, that looks cool, I want to be involved in that. But you don't have to. So it's in there because you don't have to do it.
Or May? Yeah, okay.
Only 5 on the committee.
And you do a subcommittee because then you don't have a quorum, right? So it's not subject to Open Meetings Act and all that kind of stuff. Easier to get together a small group.
Anybody have anything to amend it as written?
Question, if we did the subcommittee, we wouldn't be able to have more than 2 people on it, based on our group size, correct?
Yes. Otherwise it'd have to be public.
Right.
Yeah, quorum, yeah.
All right.
But you can have other people in that subcommittee too, right? You could have your finance director, whoever, you know.
You could have the mayor on the subcommittee.
Could.
True.
Is that not in here?
You can have anybody on your subcommittee, as long as there aren't,
Does it say
as long as there
that?
aren't more than 2 board members, so it's not a quorum.
You want language that kind of guides that, so board members in the future know that subcommittees aren't necessarily just them.
But I don't see it written anywhere, is it?
I don't think it says that it can be,
No, I see what you're saying. It doesn't make it,
clear that other people are part of that subcommittee.
say that, is what the mayor's pointing out, I think.
So for instance, the Washington County Board I sit on, usually we have 3 people because we're a board of 9. But then there's also the staff person that works for the county that runs our board, that does all the minutes and packets and does all the reporting. He's involved in every subcommittee meeting. And then sometimes the city because it's a county board, sometimes somebody from the city where the project's gonna take place will be in, like one of their council members. So you could have a council member if it's in their district, invited, they don't have to.
I think that it needs to say that in the bylaws, that other members.
At the discretion of the board, other members may be
Subcommittee
invited.
members could include other members of the community at the discretion.
Other stakeholders or interested parties or whatever.
in like the second to last sentence, a committee, and each member thereof shall serve at the pleasure of the board. All committees shall be advisory only. Maybe at the end of that second to last sentence.
Where does that sentence cover us? Each member thereof shall serve at the pleasure of the board. So whoever joins that committee can say, oh, we would like to have the mayor and the city manager sit on this as well. That sentence already covers the way it's written?
I think it covers you for sure, but I don't know if it gives board members direction to know that they can do that.
Just tweak it a little.
Okay.
Okay. Third page. All the way at the bottom to me, the word budget and how in the world. I guess I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know about obviously isn't a good word to use, but we would help put together, I mean, it's city funds.
I think obviously.
Right, I mean, we would put together the budget that would, you know, based on your direction. Now, that becomes more difficult as funding becomes available.
Money in the account.
Yeah, right. Right now, it seems fairly easy, but
I think that resolves itself a little bit more too. Once you have money to play with and you know where you have to spend it and how you have to spend it, it becomes easier for you guys to figure out your budget, doesn't it?
well, it just seems, I think where Emily's going, I won't put words in her mouth, is that really, you know, these folks don't want to spend their time
No.
hashing over budget preparation.
Staff needs to.
But saying,
yeah,
hey, we
right.
wanna allocate this much to that special grant, that's where is that kind of the idea of where they're then put
And
on?
the other thing is, once you do have a project or two and it's generating some of the administrative capture, that can only be used by the authority for administrative purposes. It can't go to the general fund, it can't go to anywhere else. So you would project, hey, for this year, we're gonna have, 20,000 in administrative tax increment coming in, so our budget will be whatever that is.
Right, but would it not work if it said, city staff shall,
Anybody,
and the board shall adopt a budget
that's
kind of
fine.
thing?
Yeah, you can write it however you want it to be, yes.
What is the city's fiscal year?
July 1st to June 30th.
So you're late.
Nah, we have 6 more days. I know, we were looking your way. You just told her it's 0.
Yeah, we got 0.
So it's fiscal year, so when they talk about nominations, elections, this is the second calendar quarter of each year.
So fiscal years and the operating year are often different.
Is that,
You're-
the case here?
Yeah, I mean, when you appoint people to this board, it's usually not based on what the fiscal year is, it's usually calendar year.
Right, it's the second quarter is whatever, March 1st, or April
April.
1st
So
through.
it's a calendar year.
I think
for that.
that's what they mean by second quarter,
Okay.
not the second quarter of the fiscal year. with-
Correct.
I was
Second
hoping,
quarter of the
I just
calendar
didn't
year.
know, I just wasn't,
Yeah, I got you.
just curious. Okay.
Any questions on this page? Okay, moving on. I don't have anything on the last page either. It's the fiscal year.
Yeah, I guess I just, I talked about this last time, I just wondered the audit, will we charge some portion of the annual city audit? Is that a expense that we can cover?
That's eligible out of your administrative capture, yes. Obviously, you won't have any capture until you have a plan that's approved and is starting to increase taxes, but
It's an eligible expense.
It is.
Okay.
Is there a finance session, course, anything that somebody like Brittany could take and.
I believe that MEDC has, because your reporting requirements as a board is to the MEDC. Every year you have to go onto the MEDC website, the portal, and you can do an annual report. Everything the Brownfield Authority is doing in terms of plans. So how many plans do you have? What's the tax increment? What's the duration? A whole bunch of information you have to enter. Obviously, you have nothing to report right now. You don't have any.
I think you do the reports, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the MEDC has also, if they don't have them recorded online, they do periodically do Brownfield training. And some of those are, how do you run a board, what fiscally, right?
Yeah, well, I think the finance piece would be
Yeah,
beneficial.
I was looking for more of like the accounting of it, because I watched the how to report the stuff to MEDC, but it's not like the accounting side of it.
So in terms of accounting for like the projects, each individual project?
We're gonna have to create a brownfield fund.
Yeah.
I wanted to know on the trial balance and everything, how like the revenues and the expenses and.
I can get you some information on that.
All right, maybe, one of the ones we've been looking at, Grand Traverse. We want a city one, I suppose, right? We could call it equal in another town, maybe that's as easy as anything, that's done a bunch of them. Does this Traverse City have a Brownfield Authority?
No, they have a county authority,
What, I mean,
Grand Traverse County.
right, but what cities do?
So Grand Rapids does, Kalamazoo does,
But
yeah, a lot of communities have. I mean,
Ludington.
City of Allington, Ludington.
I know the Ludington.
I don't know that Ludington has many active projects.
I just thought maybe if she could talk to one of the people in the office, that would, speaking.
Yeah, and I can have you talk to my coworker, Sam, who actually runs a lot of authorities and does that. So she may have some information she can share with you directly. She does a lot of the reporting for a bunch of communities. She also does TIF evaluations and EDAs and all that, so she has all kinds of tracking and spreadsheets.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the bylaws? I imagine, today's when you want us to like vote on them, adopt them.
I have one more question.
Yep.
One more question is Article 3, Section 2, Board of Directors. Not more than 9 persons unless EDC, ODA, our boards are appointed. I don't know what that means.
So that comes from the statute.
Okay.
You have to have between 5 and 9 members, but some communities don't designate a board like this. They say, our Brownfield Authority is also going to be run by our DDA board. And that board may have 11 members. So the only exception to the 9 is if you're designating some pre-existing board to also be the Brownfield Authority board, and that under their rules can have more than 9.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Bylaws as amended.
Any discussion about it? Okay, all those in favor of moving forward with the bylaws that are in front of us with the proposed amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We did it. All right. Go on by. Where's the next one? All right.
This kind of prints nonsense.
Yes, it is.
Is this card attached to it?
It's because it's a red line and there's comments.
Yeah, I had to see it.
Small.
It's meant.
Eyes are going, my lord.
With these bifocal contacts I have, I can really read.
I got magnifying glass and that doesn't help.
Phone, you open your camera and you zoom in.
Suppose that's one way to do it.
Who wrote this, Mark?
Who wrote These, I'm assuming they're from Trevor.
Yeah.
They're from you.
We gave you.
I just wonder if they're from that old one, when you were
No,
thinking.
no, we gave you a bunch of, these are policies and procedures that we use as examples when we're doing this. And then some of the comments that are in here are to further explain why you, different ways you can got it. So for instance, on the first page, when we're talking about the housing development activities, so this is the amendment from 2023 that added housing development. Something that qualifies a property as a brownfield. And there is a gap calculation, a funding gap calculation that applies to projects that have units below 120% of AMI. And so, and if you use Mishta's formula for calculating that gap, the lower you are on the AMI schedule, the greater the amount that you can get, that you can capture as an eligible amount. And that's there to basically incentivize a developer to hold some of the units at that level as attainable housing, but yet use all of the increment from the whole development to pay that gap. So if it costs them $100,000 to build, but they're gonna, if it's a for sale, they're gonna sell it at 80, that 20,000 can be returned to the developer through the tax increment. Basically is the thought there. A lot of it is usually on rental. So there's different ways you can do it. You can say, we want a certain percentage of the project to be at this level, or we won't consider some of these eligible activities unless you have a certain amount below 120 AMI. I work with a community that doesn't do interest, won't do interest on brownfields, but they will allow interest if you have a certain number of units below 120 AMI, right? So they have kind of a sliding scale. Hey, if you're at 100, we'll do this. If you're at 80, we'll do this. So it can get very complicated to put all that in writing as well. But those are the kind of things that your policies would tell developers if they're coming, hey, what can we expect? And you could say that, you know, you'll look at the individual needs of the project to determine, you know, some of these eligible activities. So you have a potential project coming in that's a housing development.
We do.
They're going to ask for gap, right, based on a certain number of units that they're gonna hold at whatever percent of AMI. And so they're also gonna ask for interest, they're gonna ask for interest on all of their eligible activities. So the way interest works is you're allowed to charge 5% simple interest every year on the unreimbursed eligible activities. So let's say you have a brownfield plan that has $1 million in eligible activities. And it's things like infrastructure, it's site preparation, it's maybe some environmental cleanup, it could be all of these things, right? Including the gap. And let's say it generates $100,000 every year in increment. So every year it's gonna go 1,900,000, 800,000, right? Just simple numbers. So every year, that first year, they can get 5% of $1 million as interest. And then the next year it's 5% of 900,000 and then 800,000. And that calculation is done at the beginning of the project when you write your brownfield plan, and there's a formula for it that Eagle has. And then it takes that and it spreads it out over the duration of the project and adds that in as an eligible activity. So now instead of $1 million, they might be at 1.6, 1.7. So that interest can be 30 or 40% of what the actual activities are. It can be that much. So that's why a lot of communities say we're not gonna do it. Or we'll do it on this portion. So I'm working with a city that doesn't do interest, but the developer is going to put in a mile of road to the city's specification. It's a public road. And it's a road the city's wanted for a long time, but hasn't been able to do. So they're spending $9 million to put in a road, oversize all the utilities, sewer, water, everything, so that future development can happen. They're allowing them interest on that portion because they're asking them to do it, and they're incurring that cost. So they're saying, we'll allow you interest on this because it's something that we've asked for and it's a public good. So there's a lot to consider. And just because it's in your policy doesn't mean you have to do it. It could be, we will entertain this if the project finances need it.
Got it, Grant?
Soaking it in.
So if our master plan now calls for workforce housing, and that is 80 to 120, whatever the term is.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
If that's a priority, then how we fashion that really should reflect the communities.
Tired.
No, maybe not, but I don't know. I'm just trying to think about how that would work.
I don't know. Market's gonna take a lot of thought process with Trevor.
Yeah.
Because the lower gaps are covered by our housing commission.
Right, yeah, the 25%, yeah, so under 80%, in theory, is more of a housing commission market.
So let's make it simpler, right?
Yes, that would be great.
One of the things that is eligible in housing that makes it so attractive is that infrastructure is an eligible activity. And the difference between housing and a conventional brownfield is that infrastructure, as it has only been considered public infrastructure in the right of way. And that, in order to capture the state taxes, you have to write a plan to MEDC, and the MEDC has to approve. It's a non-environmental. All environmental goes through Eagle review for state tax, all non-environmental goes to MEDC. Now, all housing goes to MGIFT. That's to approve capture of the 24 mills. So what you could do is you could say, we're not going to allow infrastructure as an eligible activity unless you have some percentage of units below 120% AMI. You could do that, right? So that's how you can use your policies to kind of tell developers what to expect. Hey, we're not going to entertain this unless we're getting something for it, and this is what we want.
So when the developer makes his offer of sorts, who sits down with this group and Mark and all those folks and hammers out what to do with each one?
So
We're not gonna get it, this first deal could come up this summer yet. So we're not gonna be experts in this.
no, you'll probably send it to me.
But we need to understand what happened, what you're doing, right?
Right, so you'll probably send it to me, I'll review it, I'll put like a packet of notes together and comments.
Specific one.
Yep, and then we would probably convene a subcommittee, and I could explain it to your subcommittee, or you could do it in front of the whole board, I could explain it to the whole board. But we would probably have a working session to go through, here's what they're asking for, this is a big ask, maybe, the response would be, we're not gonna approve this unless you do this, or we don't like these things. And it doesn't, the only reason you put it into policy is so that when they write a plan, they don't ask for everything. They're kind of already partway along the road to what you would approve.
They come and present to the board, I assume.
Yeah, they will at some
They're
point.
gonna submit a plan 20 days ahead of time kind of thing, and then you're gonna review it, give us some recommendations. They're gonna show up here and present or prepare their ask.
To the whole.
I don't know, that's, I guess, what
Usually they'll come to the Brownfield, this meeting.
that's what I thought, that's what I meant by
And
here.
we'll explain what they're asking for. Hopefully, by the time that happens, we will have already met and discussed it, right?
So you gotta watch those phone calls from Farkas.
Yeah.
He's already calling out, what, could you get 2 million and blah, 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 in this brownfield thing, and, well, if you do the brownfield, 2 million that we might do to do infrastructure, we have to pay for the infrastructure, and then it takes you 20 years to get the 2 million back.
So who's paying for the infrastructure?
Yeah, that's,
Let us do.
Yeah.
So, does that help us? We'd have to go out and borrow it. It doesn't help us any.
No, but you can get reimbursed for it with interest.
Over 20 years, or how many years?
However,
Yeah.
however long it takes for the increment. The other thing you could say, hey, if you want us to pay for the infrastructure, we're gonna get reimbursed first before you get it.
Before they start getting theirs.
Right.
I'm learning that part.
I like that, I like the priority.
Because usually,
Understood.
usually when municipalities enter into that kind of an agreement, they allow the developer to be reimbursed first, and then they wait. But you could say,
It'd be interesting.
you can say we want to be reimbursed first, or you can say we want to split based on, say, the percentage of activities. Like if you're putting in $1 million and they're putting in 2, well, then you're going to get 1/3 and they're going to get 2/3 of that increment concurrently until, right?
who comes up with the values? Does our assessor do that, or?
Your assessor is going to come up with the taxable value.
Right, but this is all based on taxable value.
Correct.
Right, so but it's all fictional, because nothing's built.
Correct.
So who comes up with those numbers? Do they ask us to do it, or?
Yes, they're gonna come to you in a perfect world, and you're gonna have your assessor look at their development plan and say, based on everything I see here, it would likely be assessed at this. Some assessors don't like to do that.
I could imagine that, yeah.
When they don't, or when the community says, we're not going to, they'll go out and they'll find comps and they'll come up with their own.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
And it might be right and it might be way far off.
Right, and then it's, down the line when you get
Every year, once it's actually being taxed, your calculation is gonna be done every single year. The Brownfield plan is an estimate of what's gonna be generated, but until it's built and it actually gets assessed, you don't know what that increment actually is.
That's where I was
in
wondering.
reality.
Gotcha.
So every year, that increment calculation has to be done.
I think you told us you had done an Ellen Edwin. 5 Ellen Edwins.
5 now, yeah, between me and Sam.
Yeah, so this isn't gonna be Greek to you when they give you the offer. You're gonna have read it 5 times.
So the public road one that I was talking about?
Is that Ellen Edwin? Because that's what they're talking in his ear about.
But they're paying for all the infrastructure.
We told them we weren't interested in 75 homes. That's too many homes. We might go with 50 or whatever. Well, their profit goes down if they only do 50 instead of 75, so.
Well, what also happens
to help them.
What also happens is the length of time for reimbursement increases. So it's a longer time before you start realizing the taxes increment as well, because it's going to somebody else. So you could, by increasing the density, you increase the taxable value, you could take a 20-year payoff and put it down to 15 or 14, right?
The other way of doing that is to get the state to participate.
Well, you're gonna go to the state anyway.
They all go to the state?
If it's, so on a housing plan, if they're rental units, yes.
Okay.
If it's.
We're gonna need
If they're
that.
for sale units, it doesn't make sense because they're all gonna be homesteaded and
They don't pay the 18 mills. I think
They
they're,
only-
Doesn't Ellen Edwin always start as they're for sale, but when they can't sell them, they rent them?
That's typically what they will do.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes. However, you have to assume that they're all gonna be, if it's a for sale development, you have to assume they're all gonna be sold and homesteaded at some point. Right? And so they're only paying the 6 mills, the SET, half of that goes to the state. So really, you would go through an entire approval process to get 3 mills. It's not worth it.
It's easier to understand this with a specific
Yeah.
deal.
Well, and
When
like,
you're all the vague like this, it's like, ugh. When you really hone it in, what they want,
you're gonna give us like a flow sheet of different scenarios, right?
Well, so stream rate or
that's probably the only one that helps us. A lot of them help the developer. Did you find Ellen Edwin to be fine to work with? He stayed up front and.
I have found them to be, they ask for a lot, but they will negotiate. I've found them to be reasonable. They're doing a lot of these.
That's why I'm sure they're here.
A lot of these. They've gotten very good at it. So.
It won't be 70, we're down to 54.
Still a lot.
I think they'll sell 54, $300,000 homes, they'll rent them. That's their whole plan. They did it in White Cloud. They built, how many, Mark?
I don't know,
10, was it?
6 to 10, somewhere in there, yeah.
And I don't think any of them got sold. Did they?
10 houses?
So do they have a component of this project that is rental?
No. He didn't say that, did he?
Oh, I know, I think he did say that.
So because that's,
He said every house will be for sale. If it doesn't sell, they rent it.
but that's where their calculation is gonna come in on the rentals. Because they'll hold the rentals at a lower AMI, and they'll calculate the financing gap on that and use the entire development to generate the TIF to cover that gap.
You're ready to do all that anyway, so I'm not worried.
They've reviewed them.
I think there's a specific component designated.
So here's the other thing.
I don't know that.
They will build the rental part first,
Okay,
before they start building the ones that are gonna be sold. Because they want it to start generating increment quickly.
Yep.
oh, it's guaranteed-ish, right?
Yeah. Plus, they
Plus you
can.
get the state
Plus, they
incentive.
can phase in the construction of the others over time. They may only build 4 years, 10 years.
They're gonna have a slope.
We built the sewer all the way out there on our dollar. That wouldn't work good for us.
No, but you can put in your reimbursement agreement that the development has to be complete within X number of years.
They wanna build, so they can get paid back.
Right, but they're also only gonna build as much as they think they can sell.
Well, but they can sell them all to their other company who rents them. That's what that's my understanding of what they do. Alan Edwin,
I'm just,
Alan Edwin has copper, I don't know, copper. It's another entity that buys them from Alan Edwin to do the rental.
yeah.
Oh, it's shell kind of games a little bit, but.
As long as there's humans in the houses, I don't care if they rent or buy. But people in the house.
People need rental homes
Yes.
too, I don't, yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you can put a time limit on.
Yeah, that'd be good.
On the development to be complete.
No,
And if and only what's completed in that timeline is gonna be used to calculate the tax increment.
gotcha.
Everything else-
These are your standard policies and procedures that you sent to us. For us lay people to review every one of these policies and to make an opinion is not worth time. Are you think, Mark, it's worth?
Oh, I think
Well, I guess I just, like you said, like I mean, you could just say it's at our discretion for probably every single one, but I was just confused a little bit on why, we even put any of the specifications, but like you said, it's to limit what they ask for.
So on page 2, there's 2 parts of the text that are highlighted. If you're unsure of the direction you wanna go in, I would pick the second one. Cause that says basically, we're gonna look at the financial need of each project and determine if we'll support interest at that time.
There you go.
And we
Let
talked.
them make the argument
That's good.
why they need interest, and they'll have to give you their pro forma that shows all sources and uses of funds and,
that's a good approach.
How do you guys wanna move forward? You wanna go through this page by page, or
Where she commented.
we already went through some of this, specifically, we did talk about 2.6. What we decided.
Are there minutes from the last meeting? Cause I feel like some of these things you guys made opinions on that meeting.
Yeah, we,
I did not get minutes done.
She's lazy.
I know we talked about this, I can't remember what we, I know Trevor remembers, what did we decide, Trevor?
on which one? 2 points?
6,
So 10%'s pretty common. I think you'll find that communities that have lots of active plans will often drop it to 5 because they're collecting so much. But 10% is pretty common across the board as an admin capture.
Anybody opposed to leaving it at 10%? Perfect. All right, so the next highlighted thing, I know we talked about for sure. Got, application fees. We came up with a specific dollar amount, I can't remember.
The application fee, I think we came up with was, it was a chart, it wasn't like a base fee. We had a base fee for review. And
Was it in one of the example ones?
Yeah.
Maybe.
0 to 5 million, 1,000.
Yeah.
5 million to 10 million, 2,500. And what, 10 million?
Yeah, it's the same as
It's
what.
the same as what's here.
Same
Oh,
thing,
yeah, and we
escrow
said we weren't
5,000.
gonna reinvent the wheel on that item.
Yeah.
Is anybody opposed to how that's written? Okay. Turning the page.
For $1,000 for a $5 million project is, it'd be higher, wouldn't it?
On the application fee, the purpose of your application fee is really to defray some of your upfront costs you're gonna have for like review. Right, because then it's not coming out of your administrative capture, it's coming out of a fee.
Should be more.
You can also have them escrow an amount and say, we're gonna pay our consultant out of that escrow.
I see.
The same way you probably do that with.
Last time.
Yeah.
I think they, yeah.
I don't think we included that in our fee language though.
No, I don't think so. We did talk about it though.
So if we want to do the escrow, we would need to put it in this policy.
I have a note written down from last time that has $5,000 next to the escrow.
That's what I had.
We need to add the 5,000 escrow into this.
Yeah.
Next page. Well, the next thing that has a highlighted item is 4.0 associated costs and fees. What are our hot points here, Trevor? What are we trying to decide?
Basically that they have to pay for the plan preparation, right? You're not going to do it. It's an eligible activity for them. They can include it as a reimbursed expense, as a,
The developer doesn't write that.
the developers will write their own plan. They're not gonna ask your consultant to write the plan. Right. Very rarely, sometimes.
We'll just review the plan that they submit.
Yeah, because I'm representing you. Right. They have somebody that's representing them that's writing their plan. Right, you want somebody that can look at it from your eyes. And that's where your escrow is mentioned, 422.
We just need to add the amount for that. And for that, should we add like, start with a $5,000 escrow and put language in it that if an additional amount is needed,
Yeah.
like that?
How, do you do that with, engineering plan reviews, or,
No, we haven't been, no.
okay, so you don't do that with any other?
No.
Okay.
Places do.
So yeah, you would probably have to have some kind of escalator that, you know.
He's asking if we do that, like for the planning commission, if you get a big set of plans, do we have a charge for Todd Richter to charge that back to the applicant? We haven't been doing that. That's what essentially we're doing here, is making the professional costs that are associated with reviewing them the responsibility of the applicant.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
It's a good idea.
I mean, that's what a lot of communities do for that.
Yeah.
in the same way you would probably pass on legal fees for reviewing stuff.
I mean, obviously we're blowing through.
And here's the thing, if you start doing a brownfield plan or another one, and there's something in here that isn't working, you can amend it, you can change them.
Oh, it's good to start with. It'll be nice to be able to send those to Al and Edwin, and then they know we're kind of, you know,
Right.
we got some help. That'll be clear that they're not gonna, yeah, I don't know that they would.
Trevor,
Right,
So,
right.
he's done it for.
I just have one question. Is anything that's in here going to force the Brownfield board to act a specific way, or it's more guidelines of what they won't do?
It's more guidelines for what you're looking for. There's nothing in here that says you have to do anything.
Our city attorney's not gonna come to a meeting and say you have to legally do this because, okay.
You hear that, Annika?
I asked that for a reason.
And you could put something in your bylaws and in your policy that say, you know, that you reserve the right to review each project based on its own merits or something, you know what I mean? If you wanted that kind of wiggle room.
And there's nothing to say that any of it has to be approved.
Right.
Exactly, it's a discretionary program, you don't have to approve it at all.
So a brownfield tip for real estate
Yes.
has to have some degree of income-based housing. It can't be all market.
It can be all market rate.
Oh, I thought you had to.
No, what, you only get to calculate that financing gap on the parts that are below 120% AMI.
Oh, just by rule.
Right, that's in the statute. However, you can do a completely market rate project.
You won't get any tip.
You'll get TIF for things like infrastructure and site prep. You won't be able to calculate that financing gap
Because of a rule.
because everything is market rate. There's no subsidy calculation because you're not subsidizing
That's the whole
it.
gist of it.
So the whole point of
Yep.
having projects come in at under 120% AMI is one, to make them attainable for people that live in the area, but two, it provides that mechanism by which you calculate that gap.
So for the developer, the lower the better?
The lower on the AMI scale, the greater that gap calculation is. It depends, if the overall project is going to generate enough tax increment to pay that gap, because that gap calculation can get relatively large when you're talking about 60% AMI.
I see.
70% AMI.
What's 60% of our AMI in this town?
Mr. has a table of what.
Yeah, she usually can tell me about what the income would be. Remember that?
I don't remember it, but I can look it up.
They have rental,
I think a family,
That's what
they
I
have rental rates too. So if they're
can't write the plan such that
they'll say
it's gonna get into any of these homes because we got it written.
I can look up what the Mr. rates are for here.
She has them, I think.
And it'll say, you know, a one bedroom is
Yeah.
1,300 a month.
She's read those to us, to the commission in the past.
And what's crazy is in a lot of communities, what MISTA publishes as the rental rate is fairly close to market.
Is it?
Yeah, in like Grand Rapids, it's almost no different. So they would really have to go down a lot to get much of a gap calculation, at least in some communities.
60% for one, oh, that's not our county, hold on. Let me scroll. $60, one person,
Make it a family, Michelle.
make it a family,
four
four
people.
person, 60% is 49,140.
So one member of the family making $25 an hour.
Household income, yeah.
Yeah, one person's just, but that person has a job at federal school, could get into that home then. But he'd have to rent that home, or she would have to rent that home, not buy that home. 'Cause
Well, they can do it on for sale. Right, they can sell a home at 60%.
Say, nobody at that wage
Has
has
to
a
be
down
putting in
payment.
a mortgage.
Can get a mortgage.
Yeah, but the house would be at 60% of what
So it'd be-
market
So it would be marked down.
300,000 minus 60% of that.
Right, and then the difference would be that gap calculation that would be eligible to be returned to the developer to cover
They could get into
what they
that.
cost them to build it versus what they agreed to sell it for.
So that gap is, you can do it by, like you just said, by purchasing, it's not just by renting.
Correct. So, and there's income qualifications that have to be met for the household, and there are time limits that it has to be maintained.
All banks get into this? They don't.
There are lenders that will work with developers, and the developer will assign the tax increment to them.
Really? It's a poor community, I mean. Need a bank to be able to do this.
Well, they'll find the bank. The developer will find a bank.
Could be anywhere, they get one that they like and they go.
I'm sure they have a big bank.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
If it's a bought unit, who's responsible for ensuring those incomes are we are?
The Brownfield Authority.
Yeah.
That's
So,
what I thought.
Vice chair. Vice chair, right?
Jonathan does.
and that will come into the reporting you have to do to MEDC.
But explain that real slowly. The Brownfield Authority has to.
You're gonna have a contract after you approve a Brownfield plan called a reimbursement agreement. It's a contract between you and the developer. And the authority, basically the authority of the, and it says, it will describe how that tax increment is going to be distributed, right, to codify it. But you can also have things in there that say things like, you have to submit your reimbursement requests within 24 months of incurring the cost. Otherwise, you're sitting there holding all this tax increment, waiting for them to say, hey, we spent this money, here's our proof, right? They have to make a request, they have to submit invoices that they paid, a construction company or, you know, somebody who's doing all the excavation work, right? So they provide proof that they paid these people, and they ask for a reimbursement, a distribution of the tax increment that's being held. But you don't want to wait 5 years for them to do that because it's a pain. You don't want to wait 5 years for them to do that. So you want to say, hey, within 12 months or 24 months of incurring this cost, you need to submit reimbursement. Or
They not want to.
some developers get lazy.
I can't imagine getting.
Or they forget, you know. But so that would be, but the other thing that would be in your reimbursement agreement would be that they have to provide you with all those metrics on income verification, and you would just review them and say, yeah, this looks right.
Okay, so we're not
So you would-
going out,
You
knocking
are,
on their door.
you're required to make that evaluation, but you don't have to collect all the data. You can put that back on the developer and say, you need to report to us annually all this
You
information.
taught us all this that first time. I'm starting to come back. You'd already hit all these. We're not that bright.
No, this
We'd
isn't,
already talked about all
this
this.
isn't what you do every
Starting to
day.
come back.
Yeah, well, the more you hear it, the more it'll make sense.
I
right?
got it.
We gotta hear it 21 times.
habit.
You got 20 or 19 more times.
He did explain all that.
I remember it now.
Yeah.
But the more you delve into this, the more it makes sense.
The logical
Yeah,
kind
the more
sort
it
of.
makes sense, and the more you're like, oh yeah, that's why we.
And as each piece comes in, the offer will come in, and you'll get that.
So you'll get an application that comes in.
Yes.
With a fee. And that application is gonna have certain information. It's gonna be a description of what they wanna do, right? What their total investment is. They will have already run some tax tables, so what did they estimate the reimbursement period to be, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. So they'll provide all this information. We can look at it and go, yeah, that sounds about right, or you can look at it and say, this is something we're just not interested in. And you could say, don't even bother submitting, we're not gonna approve it. All right, so you can kind of cut things off at the pass that way. But that's, your initial look at it would be everything that's on the application application. You could then go back to them and say, yeah, this looks good, go ahead and submit a draft plan.
I see.
And you're gonna make that recommendation to us then?
Yeah. Well, I'll work with you on whether or not, I'll explain what they're asking for, and you can decide if it's something that you're interested in.
You need to approve these, Em?
Yeah. Motion to approve, I think we just move forward and see what happens. We're not legally bound by anything. We have Trevor to hold our hand, so. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
With amendments.
Any more discussion on it? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Alright,
Mark, when did Farkas Lee get something together for us?
He's going to the planning commission July
16th.
16th. His site plan.
Preliminary site plan review.
So he's gotta work through the planning commission too. Is everything laid out
We'll
properly?
do this concurrent.
Yeah, he hasn't filed with us yet. He's filed on planning.
Right.
So I'm
Once
soon, I
once-
think.
Once they get some comfort level that they will be able to get the project approved, or with some tweaks get it approved, they will start this process.
Okay, so I think
They'll run them
When you
concurrent.
leave on vacation.
we'll have a,
Are there time limits
sorry to
by law? So if it takes us an extra 2 months to get it done, it does.
Table it,
the layout of the,
6 meetings.
So there isn't one where you gotta do this within 30 days and that within 30 days.
No, the only time limits in the statute on approval
all our one.
fall on the state when you
Site
submit
plan?
the work.
Big site plan, but
You're
yes.
approving a
So we don't have
brownfield
a
plan?
choice other than
They then have to,
look at the site plan.
So you're recommending
I think that's
approval
true.
to
That makes it
the
easy.
city commission,
Does he have to
that they
disclose
approve the brownfield plan. Once the city
it?
approves it, right?
I mean,
If they want to capture school taxes, they write a separate plan, called a
Disclose
3D1.
giving the
That provides more detail, and that's what goes to the state. One of those to approve school tax capture, right, the 24 mils.
They have to give us
There's a time limit in the statute for how long the state has to review it. And if they don't, it's considered approved.
Never seen it.
got it.
It's like 60, I think it's 60 days or something the state has.
Do you follow up with any of those?
My brain's always trying to think of
You guys are talking over there over me. Got it.
I've been thinking about that myself.
Do you follow any of these 5 to see if they truly are purchased?
None of the ones I've
You don't
reviewed
even,
have been constructed yet. They're all in construction. None of them
in construction.
None of them have been finished yet. I have done others that are done.
I just wondered how the Allen Edwin ones were going, because that's who's gonna,
Are they doing one in
I
Cedar
suspect
Springs?
they're going okay, otherwise they wouldn't keep doing it.
Are they doing one in Cedar Springs?
I don't know.
There's a big-
They're doing one in Shiawassee County. They're doing one in Allegan. They're doing one in Kentwood.
Allegan's a lot like our size.
Okay.
yeah, they did the press release not that long ago. It was 2,500 homes or something in the state of Michigan.
oh,
Allen Edwin.
Total.
Oh, yeah, all over, right, yeah. That's a lot of work.
Hills of Mitchell Creek?
That's not one.
That's
No,
not there.
there's
Johnson,
5 starts.
acres. At the end of Mechanic Street.
I think the Hills of Mitchell Creek is this one, isn't it?
I know.
Allen Edwin bought 5 or 6 lots in
Yeah,
Hills
and they're
Michigan.
all,
Yeah.
they're-
Those are some of the ones that are being built.
Same guys, and they have a foundation in.
yeah.
That'll be interesting, because they're the ones who wanna do our 50 homes.
Sandy Acres.
I'll be up on the hill a lot looking at that.
Sandy
Is that a working title or is that an
Mayor picked
official
that
title?
name, I think.
Sandy Ridge, Sandy Acres. You make it sound like Green Acres.
It's really,
Sandy Ridge.
it's really,
Love
they're the,
On that property.
That makes it even better. Mysterious.
Grant, do you know what Green Acres is?
Where's the sand? Where's the ridge? Where's
Is there a lot of, is that soil sandy over there? That's what I wanna know, 'cause it's not.
Got it.
In like the 60s.
the Great Folly?
there's a couple road names
Yeah, who was,
signed.
I wrote down the Leonard.
Who was the actress?
That's good.
Who?
The actress.
Judge Ava Gabor.
It was Ava Gabor.
So it wasn't Zsa Zsa.
Oh, no, it was Ava Gabor.
Wasn't she
Always
one of
knew Ava
three?
Gabor.
Wasn't she one of three? Hungarian. I was a little bit obsessed with
Yes.
that.
I'll have to look that up later.
I think this is gonna get really much easier when they make an offer.
And when you see the actual
He
plan
goes
and you
over it, then you come in and tell us what it is, then you start
what it means.
telling us how to make our thought process. This abstract stuff is not good. But when it's really specific,
It'll make a lot more sense though, because
Yes.
you've had the foundation now.
yes. And you think that could be coming as early as,
Well, they've already filed for July, and if they're doing concurrent, I would expect something in August, probably.
Probably.
They probably want to test the waters with the planning commission. Is this a go or not? Okay, it's a go, or, it looks like it will be, and then we'll go to the Brownfield, I think. Is that, yeah. So probably August we'll have which begs the question, do we need to meet in July? I don't know.
$300,000 homes rented?
See what they say.
So,
They're all
let's
at
see.
60% AMI.
You should probably have your next meeting about the time Mark tells you they're coming in. Don't you think? Why do it before? There's nothing to do
I
until
think we're pretty good until we get an
you
application.
get an application.
Did I give you an example application?
We approved one last
You
meeting.
did approve?
Yeah, we have one.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Did the application and the fee schedule last meeting.
So we're supposed to meet July 22nd. I'm just gonna leave it on the calendar. I mean, that's pretty close to August, and then we can just decide.
When they go into planning,
July
July 16th.
16th.
they won't be ready for you guys on the 22nd, I don't
So,
Okay, so should we just cancel that one?
believe it.
Alright,
yeah,
let's just cancel that one then.
so that would put us to August, I think 3rd.
It's the 4th, so then the next one's September 23rd.
She said 3rd, but it's actually the 4th.
I know.
Oh, yeah, I have it on here. August 26th is
It's the mayor's birthday.
that's Mayor's birthday.
Oh, yay!
A holiday?
It is, yes, it's a,
National holiday.
National holiday.
You don't wanna be here on your birthday?
Don't say
That
that.
just means we have to have cupcakes.
Cake, yeah.
I just wanna see how this gels together, cause there might be another one, cause we have another on pending.
well, the mayor's gonna do some real sweet talking tomorrow too, right? To get
Tomorrow,
Simon's is tomorrow. That will be a
but
problem.
you're talking about the pawn shop.
No. Simon's will be a Brownfield someday. I don't know
Hanchett.
I don't know what day that'll be. Yeah, Hanchett too.
It could
I
be.
think you guys could be busy over
There's
there.
interest coming on Hanchett again.
Yeah,
I wonder why that's starting
What
up,
do they wanna do? Cause
housing.
housing.
didn't you have, somebody had me pull some of those files.
I did,
Yeah, okay.
to give us some information.
Right, and then we had a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was helpful.
What it means for
Yeah,
future.
no, there, we had interest on Hanchett. We have to meet with Simon's tomorrow.
Oh.
Mayor's gonna work them over,
Good.
as only he can do.
You didn't have to pay us to take. We are not
To
running.
offset the liability of tearing it down.
Cleaning it up.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a big one.
We've been in the basement of it.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
I've
it's
never,
scary.
keeps talking about how cool it is and I haven't
yeah.
There's a sewer line runs through the middle of the building.
I know.
That's insane, isn't it? Yeah, and then
Executive
the
offices
east
right
side, the
there.
pawn shop area has gotten some interest too, and that could easily be a Brownfield too.
That'd be great.
We'll have you here every night of the week, for like 4 months.
It's all good stuff though, right?
That would be all, if we could, yeah.
Alright, so we'll see everybody on the national holiday of August 26th.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
And then Trevor, you'll probably get an off, if the planning commission says yeah.
Oh, sorry,